What's up YouTube, it's the Anarchy here. Today we'll be talking about a controversial topic, so please treat people's opinions with respect. It's okay to disagree, but please do so respectfully and with sound reasoning. Okay, our topic today is about the depth or how many Pokemon are viable in the Smogon and VGC metagames. This has been a hugely debated argument, and I've been waiting to give my opinions and thoughts on this for a while now. I think the depth of a Pokemon's metagame, or like how many Pokemon are competitively viable, to the point where if you fight 100 teams and you fight something at least 3 or 4 times, I think that's competitively viable. You'd be seeing that 3 or 4% obviously then. I think this is really important for the any kind of metagame, because when you have more Pokemon available, it makes it so you're not playing the same team over and over again. It's more skill-based, not relying on predictions, which I think there's some skill involved in that. However, predictions can become kind of random. You don't know what the other person's going to think to do. They might make the right play, they might not make the right play, regardless of whether they are smart enough to make that play. There's always a way for them to counter you. However, if using the same 2 teams, like we had in the last VGC tournament, the top 2 teams were exactly the same 2 teams, so it really comes down to who gets lucky on the predicts, or who gets a crit to win, and who wants to win off a crit. One of the things that I think VGC gets a bad rep for that doesn't really deserve is in its tournament play. A lot of its teams are really similar. Like I said before, the top 2 teams are exactly the same. However, I think in any metagame, I mean, obviously in Smogon it may not be as bad, but even the top competitive play, when there's like money involved, people are going to use the very best stuff. However, I think with VGC, there is a clearly defined top 6 Pokemon. Like you see the big 6 squad. There's Mega Kangaskhan, Smeargle, Primal Groudon, Xerneas, Talonflame, and Salamence, Mega Salamence. There isn't really much variety from this, and that's not just the top tournament like you see here. Any kind of tournament play, it's usually mostly this team. Obviously, you'll see some wild cards here and there, like the team that got 5th place, no, 6th place, my bad. You'll see like that stuff like all kind of tournaments. You'll see it even like regional play, Battle Spot even. You see a lot of this kind of teams because this is what wins. This is what wins. With Smogon, I think it's different. There are a lot more Pokemon you can use to and still win competitively at the top tier. And I don't mean for like casual play. If you want to go on like uncompetitive Battle Spot, sure, you can use whatever you want and win because it's not as competitive. There's people who don't spend as much time. I mean, it's in the nicest of way. They're not worse at the game. I'm saying they spend less time in the game. They don't take it as seriously. And that's fine. If you want to play that way, that's fine. Don't argue though that Smogon's worse or VGC's worse simply because of casual play when we're talking about competitive. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about competitive Pokemon play right here. Okay, so here we got this regional tournament. I think it was a seasonal holiday over in Japan for VGC format. We got the top 37 Pokemon used. I went down to basically 1% usage. I think that's lower than a lot of people think, but I think that's still competitively viable. The fact you're just seeing that once in 100 teams, you kind of have to prepare for that if you're really going serious competitive Pokemon battling, which is this is what that is. This is competitive Pokemon battling. Your top stuff like Groudon's up at 50%. That's extremely high. You're fighting one of those every other fight. The fact that you prepare for that so much, you're only able to use so much stuff to try to counter that, and that stuff is also now pushed up to the 25 percentile, 20 percentile area for Pokemon percentage usage. That kind of defines the metagame way too much when you have a Pokemon at 50%. That kind of shifts everything else to kind of gravitate around it, things that can support it, things that can be stopped by it. That's all the metagame becomes about, is trying to stop the top Pokemon, which Primal Groudon is in this sense. Okay, so this is about 1800 rating in Smogon over in Oyo. This is high level play here. This is not like your beginner stuff right here. Highest usage is at 31%, and down at 37, so that's how many people were in VGC competitively viable. Venusaur Mega is still over 5%. You have to go all the way down to the 80s. I think it's like Sylveon, I'll pull up the image in a second. You have to go down to 80 something to figure out what the 1% usage is. So instead of having 37 Pokemon being competitively viable, you have over 80 something in the Smogon metagame where you can competitively use the Pokemon and pretty much rely on it being able to win. Things that aren't used that much, like things that would be like, I don't know, like Mega Blastoise obviously isn't on this list. Stuff like that, it's not going to be like competitively viable. You can't win with that as much simply because that Pokemon's outclassed. That's the whole point of Smogon doing the whole tiered system and sending stuff to tiers that are higher or lower, putting it in a situation where it can truly compete and not ruin the environment for everybody else. Another thing about Smogon that kind of trumps VGC in my opinion is the fact that it has multiple tiers. It has, what, 5 tiers between all the way from partially used all the way up to overused. The fact that it has those 5 tiers in between there, that really makes it so it breaks up so you don't have Pokemon that are like completely outclassed like Vileplume going up against like Salamences and T-Tars. That's not fair. That thing can't win. Like, people can say, no matter what, it's not like, you're not Ash Ketchum, you can't go out and win all these not very effective matchups or with some piss-poor strategies because you believe in your Pokemon. No. The kind of people who like to use those lower-tiered Pokemon are the ones that really should like to Smogon the most, and I feel like a lot of the time they really don't like Smogon because they always say, oh no, they took my favorite Pokemon and they moved it to this tier. Well, that's probably for its best interest, or for most Pokemon's best interest. the fact that Pokemon have been balanced out so much. Those guys have done so many fights, so many different damage calcs to make those tiers. I could never do any of that. The fact that they can make all these different tiers, they really have done the best kind of metagame for most of the Pokemon, in my opinion. The fact that you can go out and use Magmortar, and you can win with it. You just aren't able to fight stuff like Latios, because honestly, it can't beat stuff like Latios or T-Tar or Gengar, Excadrill. It's outclassed by them, it gets beaten by too many of them, it doesn't do enough damage, can't tank well enough. It makes it so it has a situation or an environment where it can thrive in and it can win fights, and that it lets you kind of use this kind of Pokemon. I feel like some people kind of wrongfully accuse Smogon of making it so only a few Pokemon are viable, when really, VGC is the one where you can only go and win with 6 or 7 different Pokemon, because everything else is just outclassed. Smogon gives those Pokemon, albeit in a different tier, they give them a chance to win. Okay, so here I listed the VGC 2013, 14, and 15 top 5 teams. As you can see, as you go from the left to the right, you see less and less variability, different like kind of Pokemon that are available. The depth of it is not the same. Like you see in 2013, there's a Rhydon, there's a Magmar, there's a Jellicent. You don't see that in 2015 and 2016, which I showed you earlier. That's not there. That's completely different now. I think the adding of legendaries, which I'm going to talk about now, is really not a good thing for VGC to continue to do. I know they had to try to spice up the metagame a little bit. Adding legendaries was not how to do it. And I think what VGC needs to do is make a ban list, sort of like what Smogon does. Now, people hate it when their Pokemon gets banned or moved up a tier. However, that makes it so a lot more Pokemon are competitively viable. Like when Mega Lucario was in OU, it was able to one-shot or two-shot pretty much anything, and the fact that it had access to Nasty Plot and Swords Dance, and it could force so many switches, it wasn't really fair. They moved it up to Ubers, and guess what? It's still able to be used up in there. If they do the same thing with VGC, I'm not even talking about like more than one tier, if they take out stuff like Primal Groudon and stuff like that, stuff that just outclasses so many Pokemon, it makes it so other ones are more competitively viable, or you're able to use different like walls or things that can set up Stealth Rocks as easily as he does. Not Stealth Rocks, you don't set up Stealth Rocks in VGC. But yeah, I think that taking out stuff like Primal Groudon and like taking out the things that are just kind of outclassed every single Pokemon, that would allow more Pokemon to shine, taking out some of those top ones. Now people might say, I like those top Pokemon a lot. You kind of had your fill of it this past year. I have to say that those legendaries should not have been added in. However, as I hope that you guys can tell, I like both metagames. I prefer Smogon based on the fact that I feel like I can use more Pokemon in it. I think VGC has a lot of potential. I love double battles. I love doing doubles OU over in Smogon. That's not like their typical rule set though. They usually try to focus on single battles the most. But let me know what you guys think. What should VGC kind of do to spice it up a little bit? Anything you want to recommend to Smogon? I know they're always taking suggestions over there. They get kind of a bad rep with some of their guys over there. It's a lot of some toxic players. I think if VGC kind of had the same, like, I know they have like, the community on YouTube, but they had like a voice chat or like a text chat on the side when you're like doing a battle spot battle, I think you would see a lot of the same kind of people on it. But let me know what you guys think as always. Give me some suggestions in the comment section below. And as always guys, I can't wait to see and talk to you guys later.